Hi, it's Bernie Goldbach in the back garden, Cashel, Contemporary Ireland, looking at the west coast of Scotland across the Firth of Clyde. That's actually part of a Sunday Times magazine story. I read the Sunday Times, and the magazine this week deals with a spectrum story of really interesting landscapes. You should read it. You can also find out about survival of the fittest, or in this case, survival of the unfittest. That's Ozzy. And the genome information inside tells you why he's living so long. Hey, look, there's a lot of interesting things too in gear section of the Sunday Times. Cool stuff there. Story there about Jeremy Clarkson and his face is compressed radically in a wannabe Formula One racer inside. But there's some cool innovation stuff that deserves looking at inside this in gear section. Stuff about the Google car, quite innovative. Google's robot car is what they call it. Mark Harris writes the story. Good stuff about what that car is and where it can go. There's also some other things earlier in this in gear section about this tablet. It's Toshiba's tablet, and according to the review by Simon Kurz, it trumps the iPad. €375, access to 100,000 apps, dual-core Tegra 2 processor, internal memory of 16 gigs, 7-hour battery life. Time will tell whether it actually does kick ass, but it's got my interest because of the price point. And inside the in-gear section also stuff about how to turn your iPod Touch into a phone using apps like Skype and Yahoo Messenger, two of the ones that I use. Jennifer Connell, inside of another paper, that's Sunday Business Post, points out an app that's really worth giving. It's called the Grace app. Specializes for those with autism, and the big point that she's making, she's Jen O'Connell on Twitter. If you'd like to donate an iPhone or renew an iPod Touch to an autistic child, she explains how to do it. Grace app for autism at gmail.com is where you want to go. Really good stuff there. Sunday Business Post, Sunday Times, two papers of interest. You can see what I'm talking about on www.insideview.ie, on Twitter at topgold, or you can follow just the audio of this thing by going to underway.ie. Stuff about the front page isn't unusual. Unifall supports slumping to a new record low. Pat Leahy points out that's the worst result ever for that party. And if the numbers roll the way that they're suggesting, Unifall will lose half of its seats in the next general election if those numbers hold. Inside the paper, the market section, Richard Curran points out part of the recovery might be to give Aer Lingus a chance to be sold. I mean, after all, if Michael O'Leary wants to buy that thing and turn it into a Freddie Laker transatlantic airline, why not let it go? 150 million you might grab from Ryanair. Some small details to work out with the EU, but hey, the EU should be capitalistic in its orientation. Brian Lanahan's one of many people who might have an idea, but no leadership. So says John Fitzgerald indirectly. He says, men like Lenihan and, my God, Edna Kenny have to impress the bond markets, but also seize the opportunity to reconfigure public services and make them more efficient. What that exactly means, I don't know. But I do know that Nick Harris has given me some price points that I like on some stuff made out of canvas. Nicola Cook writes about the startup called citydeal.ie. 125,000 subscribers, part of the Groupon chain. Very innovative. O2 is ringing up profits of €4 million per week, says Gavin Daly. The profits primarily come in from shutting down shops. But you know what? I'm one of several people that I know who are giving away extra money to O2 for this crazy data charging that they're able to do because they say that I tether when I don't. John Bruton writes about how to recover. Economic recovery is achievable. He says there are a lot of issues that have to be achieved. And he points out that, you know, ministers don't actually sit in on management meetings, that 67% of civil servants believe that underperformance at work is not challenged, and performance indicators are not being monitored. Yep, I'd have to say that's true. There's a lot of easy going, coffee breaks. I mean, civil servants work hard, but there are metrics that could be used at leadership level to impose some form of standard for performance. Sunday Business Post editorial believes now is the time to raid the National Pension Reserve Fund. I mean, after all, you got €14 billion sitting there. and you can't pay for standard operations right now inside the Irish government. Time to rate it. Okay, in the Sunday Times, remember I put my stuff over here at underway.ie. Front page story, Tom Lyons, issue of transparency here. Builders are getting a NAMA pay deal, he says. Builders can pay themselves up to €200,000 a year. Interesting story when you get inside the story about how you can probably get people who work their way into a debt position to work their way out of it. You've got to pay them for that. Binmen are getting paid €240,000 a year for a job switch. It's actually an amalgamation of a figure. Colin Coyle writes about how when the binmen had to give up those jobs and go to do street cleaning and water services and transport, their loss of status moving from being a binman to being a water service guy is being compensated. About €16,000 each, compensating for loss of status and a greyhound pace. I mean, these are all issues of productivity, and if we got to pay people in public service money to change jobs, I don't know. How's that work? To me, it's an issue. It's proof that unions are complicit in how we've run ourselves, lost the run of ourselves. U.S. killed hundreds at checkpoints. Another transparency issue. This stuff pops up through WikiLeaks. Angus Stickler finds a story, and kind of like showing, and a lot of other people are showing this, cavalier use of force against Iraqi civilians really hurt. Well, it killed a lot of people and hurt that country's change back to tranquility. Damien Kybert, Irish Outlook, in the business section of the Sunday Times, points out how to defrost our reserves of money. Real good tips about recovery here. He says rebuild schools, scrap all taxes on inward and outward transport. Good idea there. And promote mobility in the housing market. Some specifics there. I mean, it's really tough to get a mortgage. It's just really tough. So if you want to unbundle some pent-up demand for people to be able to move, you're going to have to free up that mortgage market. House of Horrors. Nice little Photoshop job here of Noonan and Burton. Basically, part of the meltdown pointed out by Eamon Gilmore saying complete, utterly, astonishingly wrong projections from the Department of Finance. Part of the meltdown was actually the problem with the Minister of Finance just simply didn't have the right sums. Former Fine Gael leader Garrett Fitzgerald's convinced the Department of Finance estimates have contributed to difficulties. And there's some issues pointed out in this article by Mark Tye about some external hand-picked managers probably going to have to be brought into the Minister of Finance's office, because with who's currently there, the expertise isn't good enough. Just isn't good enough. Be afraid of bankers, says Frank Sun Times. He's Frank Fitzgibbon, editor of the Sunday Times. Points out that, if Leo Varadkar was given the stick, what he would do to people. And he cites people, Fitzgibbon does, Eugene Sheehy, Michael Fingleton, David Drum, and what would have happened to those guys in the United States if they'd been accused and brought to trial there. Well, things would have been sorted much faster. John Burns, Atticus is his little by name, the opinion section of Sunday Times. I don't like what he says here about Kieran Cuff. I like what Kieran Cuff tweets. I don't think John Burns gets it. I don't think he understands the off-the-cuff stuff that actually makes Twitter resound correctly. Right. In this back garden we have stuff to do. I really have to mow this place. I got frost on the grass right now. I'm glad you listened to both the cars outside and the birds overhead. You notice my trees are losing their leaves. So, till next week, it's Bernie Goldbach bidding goodbye to my black-eyed seasons and to you guys. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.